Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we are once again going to be going over Hurricane Dorian. So as you can see right now, it is looking very intense in our satellite imagery. So throughout the day, this eye in the middle of the storm has developed, which really is a really good indication of the storm getting stronger and more organized. So as you can see around this eye, you can see a lot of these higher clouds. They kind of look like bubbles on top. That's just the really bad thunderstorms. So you can see right now we have a lot of those bad thunderstorms right around the eye, especially the southeastern part of the eye. That's the most developed part right now, but of course when that rotates, it does change a little bit. But you can see how here we do have the Bahamas, or we're not right near the Bahamas, as you can see right here. But we're fairly close. So if we were to go to the, well, we're not going to go anywhere right now, but you can see how there are some islands over here that it's really close to. So I can imagine it is bringing some really rough surf and some coastal flooding across a lot of those areas. Now today we have been seeing coastal flooding way far from the system across parts of South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. We've been seeing a lot of flooding across a lot of these areas, not like rain flooding, but just more waves than usual are coming in, which is creating some minor coastal flooding, maybe even a little bit more like a moderate in some places. But as you can see right now, the storm is really developed and it's not looking good. It's really intense. So we are going to go over the track and everything today. We're going to try to go a little quicker because I do have to go out of town today and I don't have much time. This is recorded at 3:55, but we're going to go ahead and get into it. So in the next 12 hours, we are expecting a 120 mile per hour storm. Right now we're at 115 mile per hour at a major hurricane, and by tomorrow we are expecting 125 miles per hour, which I'm pretty sure would get us up to a Category 4. But once we get out to your 36-hour forecast, we're still in that Category 3 or 4 hurricane. I really did forget what it was, but we're still a major hurricane over the next 2 days. And then we strengthen even more once we get near the Bahamas, around 140 mile per hour. So this is definitely a Category 4. To get to a Category 5, you have to be 156 plus mile per hour, which we're not at. But you can see how right in this window is when it gets its strongest. So if you're anywhere through here, you need to watch out because it could be a Category 4, maybe even towards landfall. And you can see once it makes landfall, it's at 125 mile per hour winds, and this is 4 days from now. So this would be Tuesday morning. And if we were to go throughout the next day into your Wednesday, it's still on Florida on its second day, and it's at 75 mile per hour winds somewhere over Orlando, or it could be anywhere in here with those winds, anywhere across this cone, maybe even in the Gulf, maybe even over here, which I will talk about how over here is not out of the question in a minute. But you can see as it does move north, the cone is kind of shortened a little bit, and you can see how it's been a little bit more, okay, at landfall, it's on the East Coast. It's looking pretty likely, but you can see how we're not taking this approach anymore. We're kind of taking this approach, which is a little bit different. It's going a little bit more north. And you can see how there still is the possibility over here that it could come into the Gulf, which is the only possibility we're really seeing, or something like this, if this was to keep going, something like this. But most likely we are expecting some kind of track like this. So pretty much it's going to make landfall somewhere around southern Florida right now, near your Fort Lauderdale. If we were to go down, because I actually did do this for a reason, put all these cities, Point St. Lucie, West Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Pompano Beach, Fort Lauderdale, you're right south of it, Jupiter, near Lake Okeechobee, it's near there, Palm Bay, and Orlando, you're all on the track of this when it could still be a hurricane. And if we were to keep going, you can see how this does extend into parts of the eastern panhandle of Florida, into southern Georgia, also into parts of South Carolina. They're already extending it a little bit. So after it goes through here, we are expecting it to make some kind of track like this, like I did say. And so pretty much, if you're anywhere across here, we are expecting a lot of these flooding rains. The big question is, will we get the flooding rains over here? We will have to see. If this does move, right now, you know how I was doing it, something like that. But if it was to change and do something like this, it could cause a lot of more problems across the whole southeast coast with a lot of rainfall, which is still what we kind of are watching. And if we were to go ahead and go on to your spaghetti models, you can see how a lot of them are coming into a little bit more of agreement. Still not in the best agreement, a little bit less not as in good agreement as we would want it, but you can see how it's in pretty good agreement. It's looking pretty good, pretty good in agreement is what I should be saying. And you can see how this does make landfall across parts of the Florida East Coast, possibly. Yeah, you heard me say possibly. So it could make landfall across Central Florida. It could remain right off the coast, and the western side of the storm would be on it, which is still a bad side of the storm, but not the worst. If you were to look at this bulk of models, some of them don't make landfall, and you can see how all these models don't really make a landfall, which is still possible. And you can see with these models, especially the big bulk of the models does do something like this, like I was saying, and it goes up the eastern coast of Florida, also the Georgia coast, South Carolina coast, North Carolina coast. Then it can move out into the Atlantic, and the Northeast we're still watching. Maine, we're going to have to see how that will go, but right now we're not really concerned about the Northeast yet. Interests there are going to be later on, and you can see how there are some models that are bringing it fairly close, which is a little concerning, but right now we're not really focusing on that. But there still is the possibility, as you can see right here, there's still a possibility that it could come out to Maine. There's a few models that do take it out, but right now we're not really expecting any landfall, any impacts once we get out of the North Carolina and Georgia, Virginia area, if that's where we were seeing effects. Okay, if we look at the intensity guidance, right now we're at 115 miles per hour. So, if we were to look at this, a lot of the models are bringing it into that Category 4. So, most likely we are going to be seeing a Category 4. Probably in the next 2 days we should hit it. I do think we could hit it a little bit before. But right now we are hitting, especially in the next 2 days, we are definitely hitting it. Maybe the next 1 to 2 days, we should be seeing a Category 4 hurricane. You can see some models keep it out of Category 3, which I'm not thinking will happen. But you can see it does make landfall around this time period, which is around 4 days from now, and then after that it just dips down. So it could still be a tropical storm for quite a while after that. And then once it enters that tropical depression area, is usually just when it's a tropical depression forever and then it finally goes away. That's usually what does happen there. That does happen a lot with these tropical systems. But at landfall, we are expecting a Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane, which both have terrible impacts. Okay, if we were to go ahead and keep going onto windy.com and look at this, you can see how right now we do have some pretty bad winds. These kind of do downgrade it a little bit. These only have 50 mile per hour winds, but we're not really going to focus on that. We're going to go to the rain and thunder for now. And you can see how there's a lot of storms in this. And pretty much by your Sunday, we definitely are expecting a Category 4 by then. And you can see how intense this is around the Bahamas. So this is when the flooding could start. So in here is where we are expecting the worst of our rains right now. A lot of Florida is going to be seeing a lot of flooding also, but I just looked at the latest parts of the rainfall, and this is showing the most in parts of the Bahamas. So if we were to keep going, you can see how it hammers the Bahamas, Freeport, Foxtown, Marsh Harbor. And then once we get into your Monday night, it kind of slows down quite a bit, and you can see it's right offshore. So you could be seeing those major impacts of rain for hours across parts of Palm Beach. And finally, by your Tuesday morning, really close to landfall, and sometime around your, pretty much around your 6 a.m. it shows on Tuesday, is where we do see our landfall. You can see the eye of the storm clearly right there, and you can see how that western part of the storm isn't as bad as this eastern side of the storm. So that white is almost as bad as you can get, and you can see how much more of that there is on this eastern side. And if we were to look at your wind gusts, you will see how the worst of the wind gusts are over here. Over here we do have some pretty bad wind gusts, but you can see there's more of the bad wind gust and really bad wind gusts across there. So that is what we're looking at and really concerned about. So Palm Beach, anywhere near there, this model has the eye going over you. So that is always one of the most peaceful parts of the storm, as many people do know. So that'd be kind of cool to see, but I would not stay there to see anything from this hurricane. That's just me. I do think everybody should evacuate and should not stay, because anybody that stays is risking their life significantly. Okay, so by your Tuesday afternoon, this should be on land right now in the models, the European model run. You can see the GFS model run is pretty lined up. Finally, it's happening. And you can see how the NAM model, this is on your Sunday, and it has it a little bit more south. So you can remember how the European and parts of the GFS, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong if I were to go ahead and check. Yeah, the GFS and the European have it pretty far north. The GFS has it the most north, but you can see how the NAM model does not, and you can see how it has it on that little bit of a southern track. That is still definitely possible. So that is what we're going to have to be watching right now. Or the question is, will it go more north? Like the GFS did take it a little bit north out of all the models and made landfall a little bit more north. Near these areas of Palm Bay, you're still kind of in it, but you can see how it's just a little more north. But the European and that are pretty on point, pretty close to being on point. So I'm not too scared about the European and the GFS being too far apart. If we were to keep going into your Wednesday, you can see how this has it going over Jacksonville, and you can see how it's on the eastern coast of Florida still. So the western coast, we're not going to be seeing the worst of the impacts. And you can still see where we do have that northern part of the storm. That's the north and the eastern side are always the worst. And if you're somewhere right here, you should be expecting a lot of some severe weather to come. And you see these outer bands right here. These always do carry some of that severe weather also. And if we were to look at this right now out in the Atlantic, we would see that we do actually already have some outer bands. If it does show, I don't know if it will show. Yeah, it doesn't even show. Wow. But usually the outer bands are the storms that are kind of far out at the very edge of the storm a lot of times, or stuff like that. And they do bring the worst of the severe weather, kind of just because they're their own storm and not end of one big one, and they're just kind of their own storm. Okay, if we were to keep going into your Thursday, you can see we've been seeing impacts across Savannah, parts of Hilton Head Island, Charleston, Jacksonville, Brunswick. We've been seeing a lot of that rain coming through, and this is taking a slow trek. It's not the slowest, but it should be over Florida for about 3 days, and you can see how it does keep moving. And this has it right inland. You can see how it's right here, really close to being in the ocean, which we are going to have to watch if that does happen. But you can see how it does by your Friday bring a lot of impacts across South Carolina. This is when it does speed up a little bit, and then through your Saturday we have impacts across eastern North Carolina, and then we keep going north. And you can see with the European model, it has it extremely close, and it does have the northeast being affected. Maybe even New York you can see being affected by this storm, which I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility. Boston, Maine, anywhere in there, we could be seeing a lot of problems if this was to keep moving, and it could cause more flooding. Okay, and one more note I do want to make is we have these 2 tropical systems that will be out here by the time this does move out. So we will have to watch these ones, and that's what we are worrying about. We already do have an area to watch over here. So this area to watch we have over there today is going to be this later on. So you can see what it's going to be turning into possibly. And you can see how we actually do have 3 of these that we are going to have to keep watching over the next few days, especially this one. That one looks a little concerning. It looks like it has a little bit of that southern track compared to the others. Okay, if we were to look at our rain accumulation, you can see over the next 10 days, we are expecting a lot of rain. Almost across the whole East Coast if this does it right. If this storm does it the way we are thinking. So, at least the way the European's thinking. So you can see, once we're in the Bahamas, it's expecting about 2 feet of rain. And once we get into your eastern Florida area, right where it makes landfall, wherever it does, we have about 1.5 feet and probably even more. And sorry about my dog barking. He will be for a minute. Someone just got home. And you can see how across most of the Florida coast, we would see 6 to 12 inches or maybe even more in some areas. And you can see through Jacksonville, there's 14 inches. Savannah, there's 15 inches. This is kind of when it does slow down a little bit, when it comes to that slower pace a little bit once again, and then it does that little bit of, and then it kind of speeds up a little bit when it reaches the eastern Carolinas. They can see there's still anywhere from 6 inches to 12 inches in parts of South Carolina, coastal South Carolina, and then coastal North Carolina, there's anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of rain that could be dropping. And once we enter the northeast, it has quite a bit of rain in your area too. Maine, it shows you getting a lot. Also moving into Canada, we could be getting a lot. In Boston, we have about 5 inches, as well as Maine. We do have about 5 inches in a lot of areas, widespread. So that could be really bad. We could see impacts all the way up the East Coast, which is really concerning, right on the coast. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do one more thing. We're going to move to the U.S. rainfall potential, and you can see how, as I did say, most of our rains, the worst rains are expected to be over the northern Bahamas with 20 inches plus. So I am thinking 2 feet or maybe even more than that. And you can see in that part where it does make landfall, that's a really bad color to put on the red. It's not a really good color either. In this part where we do see this landfall across the part where it does make landfall right here, wherever it does make landfall, we are expecting 10 to 15 inches. So those are our big areas of rain. And you can see how this model, the way they have it right now, has it a little bit way closer to the coast than some of the models do. But if you do remember these spaghetti models, they were doing the same thing, keeping it right off coast, which is the best case scenario right now for the rest of the southeast coast. For Florida, it's really not going to change unless we do have it missing the coast and doing this kind of deal. That would be our best case scenario, but not looking too likely right now. It still is. We do have like a 30 or 40% chance it could happen, but right now we are expecting a landfall in Florida and moving up the southeast coast. But you can see across eastern Florida anywhere from 6 to 10 inches widespread. Across other parts of Florida, 4 to 6 inches, 2 to 4 inches as we get into parts of the eastern panhandle, very southern Florida, and then parts of the rest of Florida at the very western part of the panhandle could be seeing anywhere from 1 to 2 inches or maybe even less. So if we were to keep going up into the Georgia coast, you can see how we do have around 6 to 10 inches and some isolated spots in northern Florida. Northeastern Florida near Jacksonville, there's about 10 to 15 inches. This is when it does slow down, and you can see there's isolated spots from Georgia to parts of coastal South Carolina of that 10 to 15 inches, but widespread we are expecting around 6 to 10 inches. And then once we do get into your Myrtle Beach area, it kind of does drop off into your 4 to 6 inches across Conway, Myrtle Beach, and then into your Wilmington area right now, 4 to 6 inches, and the rest of coastal North Carolina, 4 to 6 inches is possible in the very southern part, but the rest is anywhere from 2 to 4 inches or less as we get more north into coastal North Carolina. But yeah, guys, I hope everyone did enjoy today's video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. From today on, we are going to have way shorter uploads. I probably won't be talking in them, just going to visit some family. But if y'all did enjoy today's video, once again, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great Labor Day weekend. Be safe if you are in the track of this evacuate in just a day or two. If you are in anywhere across eastern Florida, you probably should start evacuating if the officials do call. And if you think you are not safe, definitely just evacuate. It's just to be safe. Nothing's going to happen to you if you move, if you get out of there. But if you're still there, there's the risk of your life being taken away from this storm. Okay, I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.